6:30 p.m. First thing we'll do is have everyone join us for the Pledge of Allegiance, however they see fit. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let's go to the city clerk for a roll call of members.
Cumby. Sorry, Cumby.
Let's come back to us.
Okay. Gabriel.
Here.
Harrington.
Here.
O'Doherty.
Here.
Schmeckel.
Here.
Schuster.
Here.
Somerville.
Here.
Pierce.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Cumby. Mayor, just for the record, we see her name on the screen, but no audio at this time.
Right.
So
she was here during the pre-meeting. We'll just wait for her to come back, I guess, City Clerk. I don't know what to do at this point.
So at this time, Mayor, we have 8 present and 1 in between.
Sure. Thank you, City Clerk. Absolutely. I've often thought, Council, that we should have, in an instance like this, we should have the option for the City Clerk to say excused. And then if they don't end up coming back, we'll count them absent for the meeting. But anyway, let's go on now to the public comment on non-agenda items. And see if we have anyone with us tonight to make public comment on non-agenda items. I know we have a few folks joining us for some of the proclamations. We want to welcome them and thank them for taking time to be here. We'll get to those proclamations shortly. All right, seeing no request for public comment on non-agenda items, we'll move forward now to item number 5. I'd like to call on the Vice Mayor for that.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. We have no changes to the agenda tonight, so we're just going to move right ahead. And I move that the agenda be set as submitted.
Second.
Second from Councilmember Harrington by just a skosh. And then Councilmember Cumby's joined us. Welcome, Councilmember Cumby. All those in favor of the motion to approve the agenda as submitted, please say aye or raise your hand, or both.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you very much. It's going to take us now to item number 6. And under item number 6, we have a couple of proclamations tonight. It's my pleasure to turn it over to Councilmember Schuster for the reading of the proclamation. First proclamation.
Thank you very much. Mine is National Apprenticeship Act, and whereas 2022 marks the 85th anniversary of the National Apprenticeship Act, and whereas the National Apprenticeship Week is celebrating its 8th anniversary of raising awareness of the vital role registered apprenticeships provide creating opportunities by allowing apprentices to earn while they learn and preparing a pathway to a good quality job and well-paying careers in Laramie and across the nation. And whereas registered apprenticeship programs enable employees to develop and train their future workforce while offering career seekers affordable paths to secure high-paying jobs. And whereas Laramie recognizes the role of registered apprenticeships in expanding the opportunity in our workforce that include individuals who have been historically underserved, marginalized, and adversely affected by persistent poverty and inequity, thus providing a path for all qualified individuals, including women, young people of color, rural communities, justice-involved individuals, and individuals with disabilities to become apprentices and contribute to Wyoming and America's industries. And whereas Laramie recognizes that registered apprenticeship and proven and industry-driven training models can train our workforce and build a pipeline into good quality jobs in order to address our nation's pressing workforce challenges such as rebuilding our country's infrastructure, addressing critical supply chain demands, supporting a clean energy workforce, modernizing our cybersecurity response, and responding to care economic issues. Now, therefore, it be resolved that I, Brian Schuster, acting on behalf of Mayor Paul Weaver and President of the governing body of the Laramie City Council, do hereby proclaim November 14th through the 20th, 2022 as National Apprenticeship Week in the city of Laramie, Wyoming, and call upon all citizens to join me in this special observance. And the bottom says, I witness where whoever of this unto set my hand to cause to be affixed the seal of the city of Laramie on this 20th day of November 2022. Gee, I don't think it's the 20th.
We'll get in there and get that signed for folks. And thank you very much, Councilor Schuster, for reading that on behalf of our council. We would like to welcome some folks that have showed up tonight and given us some time tonight to talk to us about this proclamation. And we have, I believe, with us this evening, Laura Baker, Patrick Wolfenbarger. I think we have Javin Paoli. And do we have anyone else that's joined us this evening to talk to us about this? In any case, we want to welcome you folks. And if you have some words you'd like to add about your efforts and involvement around the recognition of apprenticeships, we would be honored to have you do so. Anybody want to step up first to share a thought or two, a word or two with the council and the public on this? Okay, we'll go ahead and recognize Mr. Wolfenbarger. Welcome. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor Weaver and councilors. It's a pleasure to be here tonight to share this proclamation. And Laramie has been a very good supporter of apprenticeships and the efforts that are recognized in the 85th anniversary of the National Apprenticeship Act. And I think that it is one of the most important needs facing workforce development is getting apprenticeship opportunities to the people of Wyoming. And one of the things that our organization is doing, Cyber Wyoming Alliance, we're a nonprofit, and we have one of the first apprenticeships for cyber security in the region. And it's important for people to know that apprenticeships are available for all sorts of career opportunities, just not the traditional ones that you might think of in electrical, plumbing, and other trades. It's expanding. And I think that there are other people here who could certainly talk to the wider implications of the apprenticeships opportunities in Wyoming to me. But again, thank you so much for your support for apprenticeships and the proclamation tonight.
Thank you very much. And of course, it's our absolute honor to do that. Ms. Baker, would you like to share anything with the council and the public on the proclamation?
Thank you for having us and celebrating us with this week. We really appreciate it. And we do have an apprentice on today that is in the cybersecurity technician apprenticeship program. I don't know if Javen would feel comfortable saying hello, but if he wanted to stop on, Mayor Weaver, we would really appreciate that. That would be great if he would do that. And then we also have Michael Ann Broad from the State Apprenticeship Office on the line. And she is a dynamo when it comes to getting alternative ways to make great careers out of trades, and new collar, blue collar, white collar jobs are now in the apprenticeship world. It's not just for HVAC and plumbing anymore. So they might want to come on and say something, but thank you, Mayor Weaver, for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you very much, and we want to thank your group for joining us again as we recognize this Apprenticeship Week. And I apologize for missing folks earlier. I do see we have those other guests with us, and if you'd like to speak, you certainly don't have to by any means. Go ahead and just indicate by clicking the raise hand icon on the control screen for Zoom. And if you're feeling like speaking with us, otherwise you don't have to. We'd like to recognize Michael Ann Broad. Thank you. You've got the floor.
Good afternoon, Mayor Weaver and council members, and I want to thank you very, very much for honoring our apprentices in the Laramie area and throughout the state. Wyoming does have 88 different programs in the state, which doesn't sound like much, but for our population, it is huge. We do have over almost 500 apprentices throughout the state. And as Laura stated, we do have multiple occupations that we are looking at. Registered apprenticeship is an occupational training program, and so we do look at that very closely and very carefully, working with companies and the apprentices to ensure that it is a high quality occupational training and not a job. And so we do work with a lot of employers to ensure that we do have that quality training, which has two different parts to it. One is a hands-on type of on-the-job learning program that is mentored. And of course, we have two great mentors on here tonight, Laura and Patrick. And then, of course, we have the theoretical learning. And we have multiple venues that can be utilized as the theoretical learning for the registered apprenticeship programs. We're expanding greatly. We just wrote a K-12 teacher program, a new pathway for teachers so that we can help address the shortage of teachers in Wyoming as well. And I would like to just thank you all again and close out so that you may be introduced to Javin. He is great. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and I think you've done an excellent introduction for us. Javin, would you like to say anything to us about the program? Again, I keep feeling like I'm putting you on the spot. You're not required, but you have been invited by a few people at this point. Well.
So Javen, I can tell, since he may be having some audio trouble, but I can tell you a little bit about Javen. He entered the program last April, a year ago in April, and he will be the quickest apprentice in the state to graduate. So he'll have graduated the fastest out of any of the other graduates. We've had 2 graduates in Casper already. It took them a little over 2 years, and Javen's going to be graduating in under 2 years. So that's pretty cool, and it's like a dual credit. So that as Javen has been working on his other industry certificates like Network Plus, Security Plus, and some of the other types of vendor certificates, he gets credit for those, and he also gets credit on the apprenticeship. So he may not be able to come on right now, but I just wanted to tell you a little bit about him. And he's our own Laramie apprentice. He's actually here in Laramie.
Ms. Baker, thank you very much. And we do appreciate just to hear a little bit about an individual person that is part of why we're doing these recognitions. And we appreciate that. So we thank you for your time and for educating us and the rest of the public about this program. I think we all recognize the growing need for these kinds of hands-on apprenticeship-based programs for the future workforce, and recognize that it's growing. It's growing across every field. As much as we need the traditional fields that we think of when we think of apprenticeships, I think we all recognize that it's grown well beyond that now, and these kinds of experiences are going to be beneficial for everybody. And that's why we need to have apprenticeships. So with that said, and that important recognition made, we'll move on to our next proclamation. I'd like to call on Councilmember Schmeckel for this one.
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas the government of Laramie, Wyoming celebrates our local small businesses and the contributions they make to our local economy and community, and whereas according to the United States Small Business Administration, there are 32.5 million small businesses in the United States. Small businesses represent 99.7% of firms with paid employees. Small businesses are responsible for 62% of net new jobs created since 1995, and small businesses employ 46.8% of the employees in the private sector in the United States. And whereas 79% of consumers understand the importance of supporting the small businesses in their community on Small Business Saturday, 70% report the day makes them want to encourage others to shop small, independently owned retailers, and 66% report that the day makes them want to shop small all year long. And whereas 58% of shoppers reported they shopped online with a small business, and 54% reported they dined or ordered takeout from a small restaurant, bar, or cafe on Small Business Saturday in 2021. And whereas Laramie, Wyoming supports our local businesses that create jobs, boost our local economy, and preserve our communities. And whereas advocacy groups, as well as the public and private organizations across the country, have endorsed the Saturday after Thanksgiving as Small Business Saturday. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Paul Weaver, acting as mayor and president of the governing body of the city of Laramie, Wyoming, does hereby proclaim November 26th as Small Business Saturday, and urge the residents of our community and communities across the country to support small businesses and merchants on Small Business Saturday and throughout the year. In witness thereof, he hereunto sets his hand to cause to be affixed the seal of the city of Laramie on this 15th day, or the 16th day of November 2022.
Thank you, Councilmember Schmeckel, for reading that on behalf of myself and the City Council. This is one of those proclamations that we're always happy to do every year. We've got a pretty vibrant small business community here in Laramie, Wyoming, and I think we all know that and recognize that. And we wouldn't be the community we are without them. And some of those businesses have been going for a long time, and we want to wish them continued success and a lot of sales and activity coming up over the holiday season. Do we have any guests with us this evening that want to talk a little bit about this proclamation or share a few words on behalf of the small business community with the council and the public? They're probably busy getting ready for the hustle and bustle.
Mayor, unfortunately, Laramie Main Street couldn't join us tonight. They're participating in the Governor's Forum events that are going on. And it appears as though Pam Wu from from Wyoming's Impacting Public Policy Group was unable to join as well.
Thank you, City Clerk. As I said, I suspect they're busy with a lot of things related to their activities as small businesses. So we just wish them the best in the upcoming holiday season. All right. Thank you, Council. We do have a few more items before us under item 6. Next up, we have a public hearing, and I'd call on the City Clerk to please read the notice.
Notice is hereby given that a public hearing of the Laramie City Council will be held Wednesday, November 16th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. via Zoom webinar for the following purpose. Original ordinance number 2052, amending Laramie Municipal Code 9.24 to conform to state law and prohibit sales of nicotine products, including tobacco, tobacco products, and electronic cigarettes to persons under the age of 21. All information relative to this matter is available for review at the City of Laramie City Clerk's office at 406 Ivinson Avenue, Laramie, Wyoming. Anyone wishing to be heard should be present or may be represented by his or her agent at the meeting.
Public hearing's open. If there are any comments with respect to this ordinance, now is a good time to make them to the count. Seeing no requests, we'll close the public hearing on this item and move on to the next item under heading 6, and that's announcements. Are there any announcements?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. There are announcements this evening. We will start with a quick introduction of our newest, actually, staff member on the city's leadership team. I've asked our new chief of police to join us this evening, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about him, and then he can fill in any gaps and tell you about himself. Chief Brown started with us on November 2nd. He was sworn in by our city clerk, Nancy Bartholomew. As you know, over the summer, we conducted a nationwide search, had multiple interview panels, lots of local folks involved in helping us select a new chief to lead our department. And Mr. Brian Brown was chosen to fulfill that role. Mr. Brown brings with him about 20 plus years of law enforcement experience, and prior to his career in law enforcement, he also served in the National Guard as a medic, I believe. Brian has a Bachelor of Science degree in Organizational Leadership from Biola University and a Master of Science in Criminal Justice. And I just wanted to have the opportunity tonight to introduce him, let him say hi to you, and kind of allow you all to put a face to the name if you haven't already had the chance to do so. Welcome, Brian.
Chief Brown, on behalf of the council, let me be the first to give you the welcome from the city council. And we're happy to see you here, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Manager. I appreciate the warm introduction. I'm looking forward to meeting everybody. I know I've had an opportunity to meet and work with several of you, but I'm excited to be here. It's a little colder than I'm used to, so I'm getting used to that. But happier to be here and looking forward to working.
Same. Thank you very much. And you'll get used to it in no time, Chief, I'm sure.
Oh, looking forward to trying. So,
all right. Anybody have anything else for the chief here? Since this is the first time he's been in our meeting, this isn't a grill the chief session, Chief Brown. We just want to make sure people have an opportunity to speak to you.
no,
All right.
sure, I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, sir, very much. City Manager.
Thank you.
Very good, Mayor. I have one other announcement. I think I'll let the city clerk mention to you the status of our rental registration program. And then I wanted to take a moment to celebrate our Employee of the Month or our Rock Star of the Month. So, Nancy.
Thank you, Mayor and City Manager. We just wanted to give you an update and a reminder that rental housing registration program is underway right now. If you go to www.cityoflaramie.org/rental housing, the applications are available online there. There's also a paper version for those that would prefer to do paper. Those applications can be brought into the city clerk's office, and we'll get those processed as soon as possible for you. Upon completion of the application, Mayor, assuming that the rental property meets the requirements within municipal code, those licenses are issued typically within a week. So they will have those available to them to supply to their renters per the ordinance. So anyways, we just want to give it a brief reminder that that program is available for registration, and we look forward to seeing those applications come in.
Thank you very much, City Clerk. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Nancy. We will accept those applications at any time, but of course, the registration requirement doesn't actually kick in till January 1st, and at that time, that's sort of the drop deadline that we're working for. So thank you.
Thank you.
Council, I wanted to take a moment to talk to you about someone I think many of you all may already know, and unfortunately, Mr. Matheson, I don't think was able to join us tonight, but many of you know Mr. Russ Matheson. He was the October Employee of the Month, our rock star for October. Some fun and interesting things about Russ. He's really involved now in sort of his second career with the city of Laramie. He's been with the city for a total of 30 years, and his first career was in the Laramie Fire Department as one of our professional firefighters. He started there in 1989. He retired in 2014 after 25 years as a firefighter and managed to make it 30 days into retirement before he applied for a new non-permanent or non-full-time, I should say, position with the city as a fire inspector. And Russ likes to joke that he is the city's highest paid and oldest provisional staff member. As you know, many of our staff members are young professionals or even folks in high school. So Russ considers himself notable in that regard. Russ is right now working with us what we call a 0.8 FTE position. He performs invaluable service in our fire prevention office, conducting high hazard inspections and the other host of work that is such an important aspect of fire prevention. And he was nominated by his boss, basically, by our Fire Prevention Life Safety Division Chief, Dennis Johnson. Interestingly, Russ is a fourth generation Laramie resident, however you want to say that. He can trace his roots all the way back to when his great-grandfather came to Laramie as a Scottish stonemason. He's been married for 43 years. They have 3 children, and his family really enjoys downhill skiing. Many of you have seen him on the slopes, and also a pretty adventurous family. They've done quite a bit of whitewater rafting, including his most memorable trip, which he says was a 7-day, 120-mile family rafting and camping trip on the Middle Fork of the Salmon River in Idaho. So we want to thank Russ for his many, many, many years, even decades of service to Laramie. And sorry that he wasn't able to be here, but next time you see him, if you'll say thank you, I'm sure he would much appreciate that recognition. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager, for telling us a little bit about Mr. Matheson, and we are happy to be part of that employee recognition. Councilmember O'Doherty.
I just want to point out that Russ is an excellent kayaker too. That's how I met him, on the Laramie River.
Thank you. That's all. That's also good to hear. All right. Well, we do like to have those employee recognition moments at the beginning of our meeting when they come up. Now we have item number 7, and this is an opportunity for any council members that have any disclosures they'd like to make about any of the items coming before us on the agenda this evening. Are there any disclosures from the council? Seeing none, we'll move on. And that brings us to item number 8, and I'm going to call on the Vice Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I move that the consent agenda be approved and that each specific action on the consent agenda be approved as indicated.
Second.
There's a second from Councilmember Harrington. And I'd ask the city clerk for a roll call vote on the consent agenda.
Humby,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Schmeckel,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Somerville,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 9 yeses and 0 nos, Your Honor.
Thank you. That motion carries. The consent agenda has been approved. Thank you, Council and City Clerk. That takes us to item number 10, the regular agenda. The first item under the regular agenda is item number 11. I call on Councilmember Schuster.
Thank you. The title of this item is Award of a Bid for Unit 600 Landfill Compactor with Trade-In. I move to award the bid for the Unit 600 landfill compactor with trade-in to Wyoming Machinery Company, Cheyenne, Wyoming, in the amount not to exceed $508,845 and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign.
Second.
Second from Councilmember Schmeckel. Thank you very much. Mr. Webb, welcome back.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, City Council. This unit 600 is indeed the landfill compactor. That's the big machine out at the landfill with the steel wheels and the cleats on it. 60,000 pound machine. Vital to the work we do out there. It does exactly what it's called. It compacts the waste. As you know, in the landfill, our number one resource out there is space. And so this machine helps to compact the waste and achieve maximum densities to extend the life of the landfill. The current landfill compactor is due for replacement. We went out to bid for a new unit. We received 2 bids. Wyoming Machinery was the low bidder. That's Caterpillar out of Cheyenne, and we are recommending award a bid.
Thank you very much. Questions for Mr. Webb about the equipment? All right, well, let me see if there's public comment. Seeing none, Council, back to you one more time. Councilmember O'Doherty.
I just wanted to thank the staff again for including the idle reduction, electric drive train, and other fuel savings options in the bid document. So it looks like that's part of the machine, and I want to thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember O'Doherty.
Honorable Mayor, if I could, we specify that's exactly what we specified. We did get the engine idle reduction shutdown on it. This machine currently does not come with the electric drivetrain. However, my understanding is Caterpillar is working toward that. And so hopefully the next time we come back for a replacement, that will be an available option. But it does have the engine idle shutdown, which will be really good. We can actually set that shutdown time so that maybe in the winter, as opposed to the summer, we want that idle time to be a little longer, maybe in the winter. And so our fleet folks can actually get into the system and set that time so that if an operator on that machine gets tied up with something else, walks away, it'll automatically shut down after a certain amount of time. I think the default's about 15 minutes, and then that machine will go into shutdown. Anyway, we're trying the best we can. These big pieces of equipment, we're really limited on those carbon reduction items. All this new equipment, the big stuff does come with EPA Tier 4 compliant engines, which helps with some of the carbon reductions. But we're doing the best we can. The big equipment is tough, but the technology is coming.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Schuster.
This is my specialty, so yes, I'm kind of comment on it. And yes, they are working towards a lot of more diesel-driven electric generators. I believe we have ordered one piece. It'd be a D7E Caterpillar, and it will be diesel over electric. It is the most efficient. Train engines have been using it for years. It saves about 15% of the fuel economy. The Tier 4 emissions he talks about, they run them on semi-trucks right now, and I don't think Denver's the best example to use, but we joke about it, that when a newer truck past 2017 drives through Denver, it's actually putting out cleaner air than it's taking in. It puts out oxygen, water vapor, carbon dioxide, which we exhale, and a lot of nitrogen. They produce a lot of nitrogen. So all good clean chemicals. This particular piece of equipment, we just got some new CAT equipment too. Its actual emissions output is 0.04, 0.04% is all there is of an emission. Diesels are the cleanest burning thing there are now and the most efficiency and energy. Just thought I'd give a little updates on that, what it is doing. So it's a great piece of equipment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Schuster. That's just fine. Appreciate the information. Director Webb, I have a quick question for you. Given the level of investment that the city makes in a large piece of equipment, machinery like this, what do we see for lifespan on that type of equipment?
Yeah, Mayor, this piece of equipment, we're not going to see as long as like when we awarded the scraper, which is another high dollar piece of equipment. That one we try to get out to anywhere from 15 to 20 years. This machine, we're basically at 7 years max. It operates in probably the harshest conditions that we have. And so it really takes a beating. When we get the landfill compactor, we actually get extended warranties with it because we know there's going to be issues because of the environment it operates in. So this piece in particular is about a 7-year lifespan.
I appreciate that. And that's understandable given what the city expects the equipment to do every day, all day. Other questions? Thank you, everybody. City Clerk, can we have a roll call vote on the item?
Cumby,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Schmeckel,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Somerville,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 9 yeses and 0 nos, Your Honor.
Thank you, City Clerk. That motion carries. That's going to take us to our next item. It's item number 12, and I'll call on, I believe we've decided it's going to be Councilmember Gabriel at this time.
Thanks, Mayor. I would move that the Laramie City Council authorize the purchase of pool features for the indoor leisure pool remodel project in the amount not to exceed $210,000, utilizing the Buy Board National Purchasing Cooperative, and further approve an FY 2023 budget transfer of $160,000, transferring funds from the Ice and Event Center Facility Upgrades Project of $75,000 and Gateway Beautification Project of $85,000, and a fiscal 2023 budget transfer of $50,000 funded fully by an Albany County Rec Board award for this project.
Second.
A second from Councilmember Schuster. Thank you very much. And I'd like to recognize our Recreation Center manager. Long time no see. Welcome.
Thank you.
So what can you tell us about this from the background?
All right. This project, we're asking for two things. Mostly, we're moving money around that is allocated in future out years for this project. And one of them is a budget transfer from a different project to this one until our collections catch up. You'll recall that all of the specific purpose tax funds for the for the Recreation Center and the Ice and Event Center were just based on collections. They were non-bonded projects. And as things have moved forward, we have some urgency behind a few of these projects. This project in particular is part of our pool remodel. And one of the things that we're running into is really long lead times for the equipment to be on site. And 2 years ago, when we started the remodel at the Recreation Center in the Grand Hall, we ran into delays that were based on availability of materials. And so our plan with the pool is to have a two-phased project. Phase one will be the plaster in the pool shell, the features, and then the pool edging that'll be tiled. At least that's the plan at the moment. Those projects are supposed to move forward this coming summer, which will be fine in the overall scheme of the project, but we would like to have this piece of equipment on hand so that we don't have to wait for anything before we start. Once we close the pool, I want it to be done as quickly as possible because especially in the summer, that's a big deal. We're timing it for the summer specifically so that we have the outdoor leisure pool open during that time, and hopefully we'll disrupt patrons as little as possible, although I know this is a big disruption. It will be worth it though. The other thing that we're asking for is the authorization to utilize what's called Buy Board. That national cooperative is a lot like the state contracts that the city is able to use, where they go out and competitively bid equipment on behalf of organizations in advance. And so what it does is it allows us to work directly with a pool equipment provider, knowing that we're going to be able to buy that at a good discounted rate in advance. Because as you're designing a project like this, you kind of want to design it for a specific piece of equipment. And it's not the case that you can buy these from very many entities out in the country. There's just a few manufacturers. So that's the story behind this project. And I'm pretty excited to place the order. I've been waiting, so we're ready to get this thing rolling.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for our rec center manager about this? Councilmember Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jody, so I understand correctly, we're talking about not actually in the sort of long term of things, not using money from gateway enhancements. We're just sort of moving money to the immediate need, and then that will be paid back by the Parks and Rec Fund later. Is that correct?
Yes, Mayor and Councilor Harrington, that's accurate. this year, we're not planning to use Gateway funds. We just don't have the staff bandwidth to complete that project. And the same thing with the Ice and Event Center funding. That funding will go back there. It'll just not happen this year. We don't have that money was allocated for design of the projects we have planned down there. And we are going to wait on those projects because the pool is a little more urgent need in terms of the condition of the plaster in the bottom of the pool. It needs to be replaced sooner than later.
Thank you, Jody, and thanks, Mr. Mayor. And I think I just wanted to make sure, I guess, that was clear for members of the public who may see that and wonder what's happening then with gateways. So I just wanted to be sure that was asked. And Mr. Mayor, can I ask one other question that is not connected to that one? Thank you. This one is a little more lighthearted, but has I was looking through the packet, has the sort of visual elements of this been selected? Did you pick colors and things of that sort? I noticed they had a plethora of options. I'm curious if you had settled on something.
Yes, Honorable Mayor and Councilor Member Harrington, the design that's in the packet is what we have settled on. And we're pretty excited about it because we spent quite a bit of time thinking about how we were going to engage different groups in the pool. When you select play features for Parks and Rec projects, it's a lot of times the age group is specified. So you'll have like 0 to 3, 3 to 5, 3 to 6, and then above. And we are really trying to make sure that there is something for everyone in the pool so that you have everything from little kids with their parents able to use the equipment, as well as tween age kids finding something engaging as well. So we've spent quite a bit of time doing that. The other thing that we did is looked for colors and designs that will go along with our logo. As you remember, a number of years ago, we updated our rec center logo, and it has new colors. And so we're trying to bring those colors throughout the facility as time goes on, and we're able to update materials and surfaces and equipment. So that's a pretty exciting one. We have another one that you all recently approved that you'll hear some updates on in the near future, because we have some equipment coming for the rec center and the Grand Hall.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, no problem. Other questions? We'll quickly see if there's a public comment about the item. Seeing none, we'll close the public comment period. Council, one more chance for any follow-up for Manager Guerin. Well, thank you for being here to tell us about this. It's been a little while. We're happy to hear about some progress on some of those important projects at our rec center.
Thank you.
City Clerk, can we have a roll call vote on the item?
Cumby,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Schmeckel,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Somerville,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 9 yeses and 0 nos, Your Honor.
Thank you. That motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Let's now move on to our next item, item number 13. I'm going to call on Councilmember Cumby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve the City of Laramie Fire Department to submit a grant application to the Wyoming Department of Health EMS Regionalization Pilot Project Grant Program in the amount of $622,500 and authorize the fire chief to sign.
Second.
Motion, second from Vice Mayor Pierce. Thank you. And Chief Johnson, welcome back.
Hello, Honorable Mayor and members of council. Thanks for listening to this one tonight. We have a grant opportunity in front of us. The Wyoming legislature appropriated $10 million of ARPA funds to spread across the state. And they specified they wanted to establish medical service regionalization pilot opportunities and investigate alternative options for providing medical service that improves access and reduce costs. A little background from the Laramie Fire Department's perspective. We've been regionalized since 1979, providing services outside of the scope of our jurisdiction. But when I dug into the grant and read the compliance, a lot of things we're trying to do is really in line with what the grant is trying to accomplish. So we've launched some pilot programs ourselves in the past few years, the first being a provisional pilot program with civilian drivers to assist us with our interfacility transfers. We've also launched a pilot program which started, the budget started in July, but we actually kicked it off in August, of civilian paramedics blended in with firefighters to help provide medical service. So on the personnel side, we've been attempting to reduce our cost. We have an increasing call load. So blending in civilian paramedics with sworn fire is, I think we're the only ones in the state doing that right now. So we'd like to apply for this grant, take some of the funds that of the 622, it would be 422,500 to help supplement wages in that program over the next 4 years. Another interesting thing is if you remember several years ago, we started investing differently in our ambulances where we paid more up front and got a real good box on the back. And then we refurbished the ambulances when the chassis need to be replaced. We moved the box over, and we're in that phase now where we're refurbishing ambulances when they need to be replaced. Over the same period, we could do 2 ambulances, one being city's cost as the match, the other being a grant if awarded. So that's a pilot program in itself in an effort to reduce cost, reduce our equipment costs. So the request is for your approval that we can go ahead and apply for this grant. We launched the civilian paramedics on a 1-year pilot program. So this would be committing us to that program for 4 years over the performance period of the grant. I stand for questions.
Any questions for Chief Johnson on the grant application? Councilmember O'Doherty.
It's more of a comment. I just want to thank the chief for looking for all these grant opportunities. Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions or comments?
Mayor, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilmember Somerville. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you, Mayor. Chief, having sat through a lot of the discussion regarding this funding last year, there was quite a bit of discussion about regionalization being across county lines, and trying to cover more counties with one ambulance service. And I know that doesn't sound like what we're doing with ours. Do you have any thoughts about that and how competitive our grant application might be?
I don't know how many Councilor Somerville, Mayor, I don't know how many applications they're going to get. I believe I can write a competitive grant in the fact that we do cross county lines with our IFT program, our interfacility transfer program. We do cross county lines with our mutual aid. As far as being set up to respond into other counties, we're not set up for that. We would have to expand and put out satellite stations. And so if that's what they're going to base it on, if there's a lot of applications for that, I imagine they'd get the priority. I believe we have a good chance. I can write a good grant to support our current operations and use our current funding. I've called over and they'll let us use our current funding model as the match. We may not be awarded, but I think we need to try.
Mayor, if I can just follow up with that, I appreciate that a lot too. I have no doubt of your ability to write a competitive grant. I didn't phrase that very well. My apologies. It was more just to the intent, I think, of the grant program. because I think we fully qualified to apply. It'll be interesting to see how they shake that out, because they also had a lot of conversation connecting not only a regional EMS service, but then they started to talk about regional dispatch, and they seem to be having a lot of those conversations in succession. So I'm fully supportive of the application. I just wondered what you had heard or what your thoughts were with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Somerville. Any other questions for the chief? I'm going to take a quick look and see if there's any public comment on the grant application. Seeing none, we'll close it. Councilmember Somerville's question raised a question of my own, which is I wonder how many counties across Wyoming would be prepared to expand into other counties with their fire services. I would guess that several of them are facing some of the same tight fiscal environment that the city of Laramie deals with on a regular basis. So I do wonder how much of that could go on versus maybe just expanding and modifying services into rural parts of their counties, especially some of our larger counties that have multiple towns and municipalities within one county. I think it's worth recognizing too that the ARPA funding continues to ripple out, and that there's continued benefit, and we're really still in kind of the early days of how those dollars can be implemented by communities to strengthen things like EMS services. So we recognize too that federal funding stream continues to be a vital lifeline to things like EMS services in rural areas in Wyoming. Chief, thank you for your background on this. Are there any other comments or questions? All right. I'd like to call on the city clerk then for the roll call vote.
Humby,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Schmeckel,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Somerville,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 9 yeses and 0 nos, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you, city clerk and council. That motion carries. Good evening, chief. Good to see you again. All right. Council members, that's going to take us now to our next item, which is item number 14. I'll call on Councilmember O'Doherty. Oh, city clerk, am I out of order?
Yeah, we're out of order.
City clerk, can you help me out?
So,
We're right.
yeah, you're correct. You were on item 14 with O'Doherty. I just couldn't hear her, so I was just trying to indicate that I couldn't hear her when she was talking.
It helps when I turn off the mute.
Well, I'm typically
Okay.
out of order, so don't worry. Councilmember O'Doherty.
I move that council approve resolution 2022-67, supporting the submission of a grant application to the Wyoming Department of State Parks and Cultural Resources for a Land and Water Conservation Fund grant in an amount not to exceed $800,000 to support the construction of Laramie Rotary Club's park at Grandview Heights, and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign.
Second.
Motion and a second from Councilmember Cumby. Appreciate it. Mr. Hunter, it's good to see you. What can you tell us about this?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Honorable Council. So back in 2020, we started looking at some property in the Grandview Heights location. The Rotary Clubs assisted in coming up with some money for design and whatnot. This just over 7.5 acres off of Bill Nye and Glacier has some, how do I put this, elevation differences. This is going to be kind of interesting to see how this park develops. Originally, when we were discussing this park, the costs were going to be right around $800,000 total. Over the last 3 years, with the materials, construction, and whatnot, it just ballooned up to $1.6 million currently. As we move forward with land and water conservation funds, we'll see if we can get the biggest bang for our buck. Just as a little bit of history, the city of Laramie has been pretty successful in garnering land and water conservation funds since around 1961. The majority of our parks have some kind of amenity, or the park itself has been developed using land and water conservation fund monies. Currently, we do have a schematic and a design in place for this park. Hopefully the attachment is there and you may be able to review that. That's about all I have for this particular location, and I'll open the floor for questions.
Appreciate that. Are there questions for Mr. Hunter about this project? Mr. Hunter, I guess I have a little bit of a question since you brought it up yourself about the terrain. Is the plan to try to eliminate any hilliness to this park, or do we want to keep some of that that natural difference in there and have a little bit of a hilly park? I'm looking here at the design. Yeah.
Honorable Mayor. So one of the biggest costs would be moving dirt around to try to create a flat space. And so one of our main goals is to utilize the terrain to the best of our ability to kind of improve the amenities there. The potential amphitheater kind of going into the side, maybe some hill slides using the actual terrain, kind of going down into it. We also kind of like the fact that as a natural bowl, parents or whatnot could actually walk along the sidewalk or stand up at the cul-de-sac just to the east and actually look down into the park to find their children or see what else is going on. So our goal is to utilize that elevation to the best of our ability to keep those costs down.
Well, for what it's worth, Mr. Hunter, I think that sounds like kind of a neat idea to have a park laid out like that. And I think there might be other people that'll agree with me. I do recognize there might be some challenges in implementing the design as well. So appreciate hearing about that a little bit. Maybe I'll be out there with my toboggan and
you might be
wrecking into the snow immediately. Councilmember Somerville.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. I just had a question pop in my head that I feel like I have to ask, and you might already know what that question is, Scott. Any possibility that we can include regular size swings at this park when you guys are designing it? Because it'll come up.
By regular size swings, I think Councilmember Somerville means Councilor Somerville size swings.
No, I mean Mr. Mayor size swings.
Honorable Mayor, through you, Andy Somerville. We do in the core design. We have a tot. Well, it's not really a tot lot. It's a 2 to 5 playground and a 5 to 12-year-old playground. Both those playgrounds are supposed to be included with swing sets. So we will have one set of bucket seats for the younger children and a normal, larger children's size swing sets as well.
That sounds great. Thank you very much, Scott.
Yes, ma'am.
Council, I'd like to apologize for making jokes at Councilmember Somerville's expense. She might be small, but I'm afraid of her. All right, let's see. Do we have any other comments or questions? Why don't we see if there's public comments or questions on the item? Seeing none, we'll close that public comment period. It's exciting to hear about another park project. And we're in the area where this is going. I think it will be a big community benefit, and I think the design looks really interesting. Let's go to the city clerk for a roll call vote.
Humby.
Yes.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Harrington.
Yes.
O'Doherty.
Yes.
Schmeckel.
Yes.
Schuster.
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 9 yeses and 0 nos, Your Honor.
Thank you, city clerk. That motion carries. That's going to take us to the next item on the agenda, which will be item number 15. And I'd like to call on Councilmember Cumby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve on second reading original ordinance number 2052, amending Laramie Municipal Code 9.24, conform to state law and prohibit sales of nicotine products, including tobacco, tobacco products, and electronic cigarettes to persons under the age of 21.
Second.
I think a second from Councilmember Schuster that time. And I see that we've got city prosecutor from the city attorney's office, Ms. Austin Belaski. Welcome, Would you like to provide some background for the council on this item?
Yes, Honorable Mayor, Council. The purpose for amending this code was because 2 years ago, the Wyoming legislature changed the state law to prohibit sales to nicotine products to anybody under the age of 21 years. Our ordinance stayed the same and has been under 18 years of age. So the intent is just to make it consistent with state law, conform it to state law, and so that it's consistent throughout the city for what's applicable in state court as well, and consistent for retailers and merchants as well as people of the right age to be able to purchase nicotine. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? I think I'd like to ask a question by way of kind of illustrating this a little bit, if I could, Ms. Austin-Belansky. Since this is the state of Wyoming's law, that anyone under the age of 21 can't buy or possess these nicotine or nicotine-related products, we're not in a situation where someone could be on the city limits and be smoking a cigarette if they were 18 years old and be allowed to do that and then step over into the county would be illegal. No, that's not how this works. This is illegal no matter where you are in the state of Wyoming. And our ordinance, frankly, is required to be in compliance with the state law regulating tobacco products. Is that pretty much correct?
Honorable Mayor, I do believe that that's correct. As a city, we can be more restrictive, but not less. And so currently, it would be a violation of the law for an 18, 19, or 20-year-old to either have or purchase nicotine products. Right now, it just simply, the citation would go into a state court because our city law is out of conformity. And so in order to bring it into compliance, I simply wanted to amend the law to make it consistent with state law.
Thank you. I appreciate that explanation. Do we have any other questions or comments on this? Let me see if there's any public comment on this. Seeing none, we'll close the public comment period. I just want to make a quick acknowledgement that we did hear some comment about this during the last reading, but I think those comments were somewhat adjacent to the issue, but not directly related to the issue, and we can have some other discussion about some of those topics later. This is a more housekeeping-oriented city ordinance change, in my view, and I think other council members may agree with that view as well. Seeing no further comment or question, we'll just go to the city clerk for a roll call vote.
Humby,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Schmeckel,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Somerville,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 9 yeses and 0 nos, Your Honor.
Thank you, City Clerk. That motion carries. And that'll now bring us to our next item on the agenda, item number 16. I'm going to call on Councilmember Schmeckel.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve original ordinance number 2053 on first reading, amending the definitions and enforcement procedures of the Laramie Rental Housing Code.
Second.
A second from the Vice Mayor. We'll go to the City Attorney for background.
Mayor and Council, this is brought to you, these revisions to the rental housing ordinance following litigation, which you're all aware, filed by a landlord in town. The result of that litigation was that the district court ruled that the kind of regulations you passed are not preempted by state statute, so that the city is free to impose these sorts of regulations in the circumstances that you have. The judge also ruled that the procedural and / enforcement aspects of the ordinance that was passed were unconstitutionally vague. The landlord plaintiff filed an appeal of the judge's ruling and then later dropped that appeal. We chose not to appeal
because it seemed easier to address the judge's concerns about the enforcement provisions with an amendment to the ordinance. And that amendment is now before you. So a couple other preliminaries. Note that these amendments before you make no substantive changes to the ordinance in the sense that the regulations imposed on rental residential housing are not changed. What we are changing is to address two concerns of the district court judge. Those concerns were basically two. What type of action in municipal court, if all else fails, is going to occur? Is it going to be civil or is it going to be criminal? Now, of course, it's going to be criminal because the municipal court does nothing else. But we decided to address the judge's concerns by making that crystal clear. The other concern of the district court judge was we had a system outlined in this ordinance, which system will remain, a system of this being complaint-based. In other words, the city was not going to be roaming around trying to enforce the code provisions that you enacted, but the city would accept a complaint from a tenant. And the city manager would look into that complaint. And the procedure is a little complicated. But the end result would be if the complaint was found to be valid and the concerns were not addressed, then we would go into municipal court against that landlord. However, and I think this was fair with the district court judge, it wasn't particularly clear, or you could read it, that during that process of the city manager's office looking into a filed complaint, you could read it that the city manager could issue an order, finding the complaint valid. And then the question becomes, is it the city manager's order that would be addressed or litigated in municipal court, or is it something else? And so these amendments clear up any possible confusion on that. The city manager in these amendments no longer issues orders, but at the end of trying to resolve these things, the city manager will give a notice that says, it is the city manager's belief that the complaint was valid, and here you have X number of days to fix it, and if you don't, then you will go into municipal court with a, based on a criminal information filed presumably by my office. So those are the amendments before you. I can walk you through them. I noticed, by the way, a couple of typos. This has been a lot of work by a number of lawyers, and we'll get those fixed on second reading. But I think if you turn to the first highlighted amendment before you tonight, it's in the definitions section where the notion of a violation is defined to make it clear that a violation means a violation of this ordinance. But if an allegation of a violation is not resolved, and that's in the process in the city manager's office, then pursuant to that section, the matter shall be brought before the municipal court for determination of guilt. I'm reading quickly. Upon a finding of guilt for a violation of this ordinance, the guilty party shall be subject to the penalties section. So we tried to make it clear that this is the overall structure of this ordinance now as amended. And then the rest of the amendments that you see largely all in the procedure section try to underscore that. I mean, there are a couple other smaller amendments where we decided it would be better to call the person filing a complaint, not call them the tenant, but call them the complainant all the time. So there are some housekeeping amendments, but it makes it clear down to section 80040G, where we amend it to say that the city manager is not issuing an order. The city manager is issuing a notice of a violation, and what that violation has to include and the deadlines. And then we move further down in that section, and it says that the city manager, if those deadlines are not met, the city manager may send this for a criminal prosecution in municipal court. The criminal prosecution is for violation of the substantive provisions of this ordinance set forth in section 0.040. So that's what we're attempting to do here, is to address those concerns of the district court judge. You've all read the opinion. The opinion's been well publicized. So this is not changing the meat of the ordinance, the substance of it, but to make more clear how the enforcement of this ordinance works. And with that, it's probably easier if I take questions.
Thank you, City Attorney. Questions? Vice Chair Pierce.
Yeah, Mayor, I don't have a question. I just want to thank Bob and his team for all his attention to this and clarifying, to the best of our ability to be in line with what our district court judge wants us to do in terms of clarifying some of the issues. So thanks so much, and looking forward to those little typo fixes. And thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Other questions? City Attorney, I have a question, but I'm going to direct it more towards the city manager, but I'd like you to, of course, keenly listen in case you have input on it. Questions for the city manager. And that's just this. Is there anything reflected in these amendments that in any way alters what the council's goal has been from the beginning of the creation of this ordinance and all the discussions around it, that changes our goal, which is to make sure that these things, for the most part, can be resolved before the municipal court process begins? I don't see anything here. I wonder if you see anything here that changes that goal and that approach.
I'm going to answer that before the city manager does.
Please, that's fine.
If you don't mind, Mayor. The answer is no. The bulk of this, there's two real beating hearts to this ordinance. And the first is the substantive setting out of what requirements a rental dwelling unit has to meet. And those were well discussed when we passed the ordinance, and they were not discussed or undermined by the district court, and they're not changed now. So that was the first thing I think the council wanted, was these substantive rules for what a dwelling unit must have and do and what shape it must be in. Then the next thing that I believe council wanted, indicated by your question, is that this only be complaint-based. This is not the city going out to find violations in any respect. We wait for a tenant to make a complaint, and then the other heart of this ordinance is the process where the city manager's office can take a look at that complaint, see if it's valid or invalid. If there is validity, the city manager's office can oversee a process. Mediation is the wrong word, but a process of discussion and hopefully resolution between the tenant and the landlord. The last resort in this ordinance, and I believe this was council's intent at the beginning, is to end up with a matter in municipal court. So I hope that answers your question, and Janine can add whatever she wants to add.
Thank you, Bob. And Mary has nothing to add.
And thank you both. And my intention wasn't to bypass the city attorney's answer at all. I just felt like perhaps the city manager might want to weigh in, given their role in the process we've built. But I have had my question answered. Thank you both. Thank you, city attorney. Any other questions? Yeah, Councilmember Cumby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hold on, I lost my place. Okay. I have a question comment, and this is based on a letter that we received from a property owner who lives in Montana and owns rental property here, and had read the ordinance as requiring a property manager. So in exploring that, I went in to the new ordinance, and under 8.80.060 Part B, it states owner must identify an owner's agent, and the rest, who resides in Wyoming. And I think that this is confusing when someone's reading it, because the way it reads is that an owner must have an owner's agent. It doesn't qualify that if the owner lives 60 miles or less from Laramie, that they become their own agent. So I'm just curious about that, and if we need to adjust that.
Well, if I could respond, first of all, this was not that provision. I know it well. We had talked about that. I think council had back when we passed this ordinance, and I certainly had not focused on this provision. But let me say that there is nothing that stops an owner from identifying themselves as the agent. I think our discussion back when we passed this ordinance had to do with how far away can an agent be. And I see nothing in that provision that would preclude an owner saying, yeah, I own it. I'm the landlord and I'm the agent. Here's my information. But I mean, since this is now before you, Councilor Cumby, if you think that there need to be alterations, I think council now's the time. Council can discuss anything they want to discuss. So that was my quick thought to your question. I don't know if it answers
it. Thank you. It does help, but I think that the way it's written, it sounds like an owner must identify an owner's agent, is what it says. And people are interpreting it. I just wonder if we need to add a phrase, if they are not local and acting as their own agent. I just wonder if we need to clarify that, because this idea that they have to hire somebody to be an agent keeps coming up and being presented to us. So I just think we might need to clean that up a little bit.
City manager, I see you raised your hand.
Mayor and Council, I would offer that, we also field calls with respect to this question, Councilor Cumby. In the definitions section of the ordinance as you adopted it, owner's agent is defined as a responsible party identified by the property owner for every dwelling unit. So, it's our understanding that definition is pretty clear, that it has to be a responsible party, And that party can be the owner if the owner is within the distance requirement, or it can be somebody else. But like the attorney said, if you all want to clarify further, I suppose you could expound on that definition section where it identifies owner's agent. The other thing I would offer to council is our offices became aware, I don't know, a few weeks ago that probably some enterprising entrepreneurs in town have been sending out solicitation letters to property owners with rental property in Laramie, offering their services as property managers, perhaps even implying that property management services are required. But I think the city attorney would agree with me to say our ordinance does not require any rental landlord property owner to have a property manager, only required to have an owner's agent within a particular distance, and that owner's agent can be the owner.
Yeah. I'll finish, but I just wonder if we need to alter that B section that it can be the owner, because the way it reads, it says the owner must identify an owner's agent. So that's it. That's my comment. Thank you.
Councilmember Schmeckel.
Thank you, Mayor. City Attorney, is this owner's agent similar to like a registered agent for a business entity, where it's simply the person that would receive the lawsuit or be the person that the police would contact, that's not actually actively looking for the person that paints the windows or things like that?
Councilor Schmeckel, if I understand the question, essentially, yes, the point is, we need somebody, we don't, when I say we, council didn't seem to care if somebody in California or New Mexico or New York owns residential rental housing here. Council, I believe, just wanted to make sure that there was somebody we could contact, responsible party within 60 miles. So yeah, it's either you or somebody that you name as the person who can take notice, is responsible for this unit, and can deal with it should a complaint come forward. So yeah, I think the answer to your question is yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In a lot the same vein as Councilor Schmeckel's conversation, I was going to say that this is a fairly familiar idea, I think, in the business world in general, having somebody who's going to receive your sort of like a point of contact, not management in any sort of reasonable way. And then I would also say that I think there's an opportunity for the city manager to include information to address this, I think in a very basic way, along with their registration. And then I guess my final point, Mr. Mayor, would be we can't solve all of these problems. And if you are uninformed about the way that this plays out, the free market will find a solution for you. And that may be enterprising folks offering to be your property managers, but I'm not sure that that's our place.
Other discussion? I have a thought about this question. The ordinance does not require that a rental property owner hire a property manager. It requires that the owner of the property have someone identified within 60 miles of the city of Laramie be the responsible point of contact. And that is what we're asking. It does, however, try to create a situation where if you own rental property here and you don't live here, you cannot be the point of contact. You need someone local to be the point of contact. It doesn't have to be a professional property management agency. It could be Councilmember Harrington or whomever, as long as there's someone in place to do that. And that's what we sought to do because, of course, as the council went through the process, one of the problems that was brought to us by constituents was when they have a rental property owned by someone out of town, sometimes that person cannot be easily reached And that creates an issue. And that's what we're attempting to remedy through the code. I'm not sure if we need to have some adjustments, as Councilmember Cumby suggests, to make that more clear, or if we need to do a better job of communicating that requirement as it stands in the ordinance. That's my thought surrounding that part of the discussion. Any other discussion? Vice Mayor, and then I'll go to Councilmember Gabriel. Vice Mayor Pierce.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think what happens a lot of times is the responsible landlords out there, and we have many great landlords who just want a little clarity in their responsibility related to this ordinance. And I suspect that is the case of the letter that we received and of this particular person. And I think we were only attempting to answer, like the mayor said, our constituents who complain about not being able to get a hold of the landlord and them not responding. I suspect that this particular landlord, and really most landlords in town, whether they live in Montana or California, will either know somebody here or respond immediately if there is, water running all over the apartment or a plumbing issue or whatever happens to be the case. So I think it's just a situation where the more we educate, the folks, the better it will be.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Gabriel.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to make this brief comment about my position in the past. I've been opposed to the rental housing code, but since reconsidered, since I've talked to a majority of people, and they've really convinced me that, as a counselor, I need to be listening. And, I made a case earlier about state statute covering rental housing, but we heard and passed public comments about how cumbersome it can be for people to follow through on complaints with landowners. If you have to go through the state and you have to hire an attorney and so on. So I think it's important, from my standpoint as a counselor, to listen to my constituency in Ward number 3. And it just seems to me that there is support for this. And as we move on here on this particular second and third reading, assuming that it passes tonight, I would certainly entertain more comments on the rental housing code. As a counselor, you have to weigh the decisions that you make as a counselor and from the public, and then I think it's really important that we all listen to everybody in our community. And since we have this high student population, I think the rental housing code is going to be very important, and certainly encourage people to let us know as we proceed on second and third, assuming this passes tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gabriel. Other commentary? I'd like to make just a point. I heard this referenced as a new ordinance, and I think it's important to raise the point of information. It is not a new ordinance. This is clarifying amendments to some sections of the ordinance. This is not a new ordinance. This is amendments to the ordinance. And in that spirit, we would ask discussion and public comment to be centered around the amendments as opposed to the broader discussion of whether or not there should or should not be a rental housing ordinance. Further discussion or commentary? Seeing none, we'll go to public comments. Seeing none, we'll go back to the council for your follow-up comments or questions. Seeing none, City Clerk, I'd ask you to have a roll call vote for us.
Cumby,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Schmeckel,
Yes.
Schuster,
No.
Somerville,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 8 yeses and 1 no, Your Honor.
That motion carries. Thank you, City Clerk. That takes us now to the next item on our agenda this evening, item number 17. And I will call on Vice Mayor Pierce.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the Laramie City Council approve on first reading and introduction original ordinance number 2054, adding Laramie Municipal Code Chapter 2.34 titled Laramie Urban Renewal Agency.
Second.
Second from Councilmember Schmeckel. And we will go to Mr. Teeny from Planning, Community Development. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. The item before you today is, as stated kind of during the motion, is the Urban Renewal Authority. It's kind of the second step in the process, as we like to call it. If you recall, we've had a few meetings regarding the Urban Renewal Authority up to this point. Those meetings kind of completed the first step in the process. Now we are in the second step of the process, which is actually placing this group in code, just like we do, and as it's stated within the staff report, similar to like we have the Board of Health, Airport Board, and Planning Commission. And so this ordinance, very simply put, is establishing the group that will organize and run the Urban Renewal Authority as it's being set up and as it's established for the community. As you'll see in the ordinance, it's fairly basic. It creates a board, which is the Urban Renewal Authority. And then we've provided within the information in your packet, the bylaws that would be associated with said board that would govern essentially the Urban Renewal Authority once it was active and once members were appointed. And so if you look in the cover sheet that was provided, we've provided a nice figure that just kind of gives you a little bit of a timeline as to where we're at in the process. So we're allowed to complete a URA. We've initiated that through the initial resolution that was approved by council. We're now creating the ordinance for creating the URA and putting in the bylaws. And then you kind of see the next step, which would be eventual appointment of members if this ordinance was to pass. And so really this is just kind of your next step in the process of creating another tool that our community can use to allow for growth and development within the city. And so really with that, I would be happy to take any questions, and I think that's all I have today.
Thank you, Mr. Cheney. Appreciate that. Looks like we've got some questions coming. Let's call on Councilmember Harrington first.
Thank you, Mayor. I think my first question would be in section 5.7, Derek, where it talks about sort of review criteria and things of that variety. It mentions the staff, and I'm curious if you can give me maybe a little clarification on, are we talking city staff? And if so, what members of staff, and then sort of like clarify the role that the staff member plays. I guess maybe when it just said, sort of it outlines the board and then it just says in staff. Looking for a little clarification. So that's the very last line of page 4.
Mayor, Council, let me just pulling it up here, just make sure I'm getting it right. Let's see.
Mayor, I can address the question while Derek's looking. Councilor Harrington, for time being, staff would be city staff. There is nothing in the ordinance nor bylaws that's currently written that would preclude the Urban Renewal Authority at some point in the future from perhaps securing professional staff if their work becomes large enough to support staff members. But in the meantime, that would be city staff working with this board, much like we work with all the other boards boards and commissions, largely focused in my office and also in the planning office.
Mr. Mayor, City Manager, would those be sort of conceived as voting members? Those staff members, are they voting and as decisions are made, or is that just simply sort of expertise that they're bringing to the board?
Through you, Mayor Kilser Harrington, the staff members are not voting members. I think the voting members are identified in the second article. Staff members would be reviewing applications as might come in for tax increment financing, much like we do for the city council with development applications and that sort of thing. We'd be conducting that initial first vetting, perhaps ranking those applications out based on the criteria identified on page 4, and then presenting those to the board for consideration.
And Mayor and Council, I'd agree that the staff would be support, just like we would to almost all of our other boards and commissions, and would use any of the expertise of staff to help us aid in reviewing these proposals. Many of them could even include engineering aspects or other aspects that we have expertise within the city. So,
thank you, Mr. Cheney. Councilmember Harrington, was that your? Okay. Next up, we have Councilmember O'Doherty.
I'm trying to picture who the commissioners are, and I know one of the criticisms of this is having unelected people on this board. So if we had council members, would they, instead of just being liaisons, would they be like part of the board? And is that even a possibility to have council members? Thanks.
Councilmember O'Doherty and staff, if you'll allow it, because that question is so similar to the same that I was going to ask, and I want to review a little history for the other council members. City Manager, I remember when the council briefly considered aspects of an urban renewal agency in 2016. At the time, it was at least discussed in the work session that for the particular configuration of this board, it could be the council itself. Are we in error there? And how do other municipalities that have a URA right now composing their boards?
Mayor, to address that question, I would remind the council that what is ultimately recommended by the URA will come to council for final approval, the development plan. So were you to put yourselves on this board, in some respect, I think you'd have twice the vote. Other communities we've modeled the ordinance in front of you after other communities, as we've also modeled the bylaws that are in front of you tonight. And then one other minor point on the bylaws, and this may be important because Councilor Harrington's question where we were talking about the criteria in that page 4, that is in fact the bylaws, which you would not be adopting tonight. We've included the bylaws in the packet for you so that you have time on first reading of the ordinance, also on second reading of the ordinance to consider those bylaws in tandem with the ordinance that you're actually voting on. But you will not finally approve the bylaws until third reading of the ordinance. So that might be important so that we don't spend too much time on the bylaws tonight. But again, just reiterating my answer, council will approve the development plans. And so having you on the board, I think would be redundant in a lot of ways. The other thing you should keep in mind is as we seat a new council in January after this ordinance passes, if it passes, we will be asking you to appoint a liaison to this board, just like you have liaisons to the Planning Commission, to the Traffic Commission, et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you, City Manager. And Councilmember O'Doherty, I hope you don't mind my piggybacking on that question there because so many of the things were in the same area. So I appreciate it.
I forgot about that step. So thank you.
Mayor and Council, and to that question too, state statute does specify kind of who can be appointed, talking about they have to reside within the area of the Urban Renewal Authority boundary and things like that. So there's some outlined provisions within statutes as to who can be appointed. So,
So Mr. Cheney, if the urban renewal area was fairly small, then that would limit and who we could appoint then.
Correct. Yeah, it says which, shall be, in the operation of the agency, or within the area of the operation of the agency, which is the agency being the urban renewal agency, or authority. So, yep.
Okay.
If I could add to that, Mayor, in your blight determination ordinance that was the first action to get us to this point, we did identify the blight or the urban renewal area to include the entirety of the city. So that area, as it's currently defined, does include the entirety of the city, meaning your members that you will appoint to the urban renewal authority must reside within the city. Now, Derek's correct. In a future, there's nothing in the future that would preclude the council from creating a smaller or a more distinct blight area with a distinct boundary that would be inside of the city and only a portion of it. But right now it is the entirety of it. So the folks you appoint would have to reside within the city of Laramie.
Thank you both for that clarification.
And yes. Mayor and council, just one more thing on this. Actually, within that section that's listed in the bylaws, if you go into the Wyoming state statutes, there's section D, and it does make it very clear that the commissioner or the person appointed to this in this chapter it says no commissioner shall hold any other public municipal office for which compensation is received. So I think that's pretty clear. So I think that goes directly to the question asked. So section D of 134 in Wyoming state statute there. So
thank you. The council really appreciates the clarification and detail on that question. Let's next go to Councilmember Schuster, who's been patiently waiting. Councilmember Schuster.
Councilor Harrington had his hand up, and then it went down, it came back up, so I don't know who you want first there. He's waving at me, so I guess I'll go. Couple things. It says in here that meetings at least will be held annually. I mean, I think, wow, we're not going to have many meetings if we do this. And then it says a special meeting can be called within a 4-day notice. So I just wondered if on this, I would like to see something more of a regular schedule, because that's really vague on the meetings. That, and I thought we talked about a donut outside the city of Laramie, so maybe I misheard it, or I'm thinking of some other different thing, but I really thought we were kind of going a little bit larger than the city. But those are my two, and I'll listen now. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Councilmember Schuster, I'll venture a point of information by way of an answer. I think that's a minimum amount of meetings, and it could be specified in the bylaws a required number of meetings beyond annually. I think that's fair to say from what we've heard from the staff so far. So if that's a concern, that could be stipulated, but no less than at least once a year.
Mayor, Commission, Mayor, Council, it says at least annually. That's pretty common language we see in some other boards and commissions. One that I participate in, which is USAC, we do at least one meeting, so that we're meeting annually and can appoint members and approve minutes and things at least once a year. It doesn't preclude us from having more meetings. Speaking to the boundary, as City Manager Jordan mentioned, during the blight study, we did define those areas as the city limits at this point, but also as City Manager Jordan mentioned, we can make new areas over time if we see that fit, which I guess could include areas outside the city, but at this point, that's not what is defined as the urban renewal area. So,
Mr. Cheney, wouldn't state statute currently prohibit the city from creating a URA blight designation outside of the city limits? With the nullification powers that the county has. Maybe that's a question for the city attorney to research for us in the future.
I think what the key is that they can be created in the county. I mean, I would say that if we were to feel like that was something that was important, we would probably involve the county. So, I mean, that's just, but I don't think it precludes precludes it from happening within the county.
Thank you, Mr. Tini. I'm going to advise staff, given the nature of concerns that we've heard about this previously and some of the past that we have gone through regarding extraterritorial jurisdiction exercises by the city, that we research this very carefully and provide some clarifying information around those questions. City Manager Jordan, I see you've raised your hand.
No, Mayor, that's fine. I think my question can be handled by the research request.
I appreciate that very much. Councilmember Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess maybe I didn't realize we weren't also adopting bylaws, so I appreciate that clarification. I thought we were sort of one fell swoop here. So I had a whole list of questions about the bylaws that I'm just going to stick into my pocket for a future meeting. But I did have one question that would pertain to the council's review of the development plan. So at this point, the project is basically finished, correct? Once we're to a development review.
So in the hypothetical, Councilmember Harrington, okay.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, and I hate to ask hypotheticals, but I assume that that's sort of like the final stamp as it comes to the council.
Mayor and Councilor Harrington, if I can jump in, if you want to look at the cover sheet, and I know you've all got a lot of files probably open for this item, but on the top of page 2 of your cover sheet, there is kind of a diagram that shows you the process that the statute sets forth. And I'll just mention that the authority to create the renewal agency is out of Title 15. I don't want to play city attorney, and we'll let Bob do his research, but Title 15 is powers of cities. So that might harken back to your conversation a moment ago about extraterritorial areas. So if you look at the top of page 2 of your cover sheet, you'll see we're kind of in the third block of the 6 that are there, where we're creating or considering the creation of an ordinance that will establish the Urban Renewal Authority. Then we would move right into the next block to appoint members. They would meet, elect officers, do those things. And then project plans and development plans would be developed and approved by the council. And then at some point thereafter, the Urban Renewal Agency can accept requests basically for tax increment financing for projects that concur with that development plan and the other criteria that you saw laid out in the bylaws, things like the city's comp plan, just really common sense things. So we're still pretty early in the process, but Councilor Harrington, to your question, if I understood it right, the agreement or the development plan that the URA would receive for tax increment financing and approve would come subsequent to the council really having a development plan that you have reviewed and approved, and then they sort of execute the work of making that happen in the real world.
City Manager, yeah, and I think so that largely, sorry, Mr. Mayor, is it all right if I ask maybe just to follow up? I think I think this is helpful. Sort of we will, if this moves forward, we will just sort of cycle through the final 2, and the first 5 will be left out. But I guess really the question I had was about oversight of project selection, and I think it would. Maybe just be really frank about it. If I was a developer, there would be some uneasiness that I'm going to work with one board and then another board that is sort of cold on the idea is going to rule on it, up or down, without maybe any sort of like, I guess in my head I'm trying to bridge that gap of how we ensure that the projects selected fit in with the overall direction that the council at the time would like to see the URA utilized. And maybe that's not a solution that we have now, but I want the council to have oversight, to be really clear. I'm just not sure at what phase it makes sense. And so now I'm just thinking out loud, and that's not helpful. So I'm going to quit. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor, Councilmember Harrington, I'm chuckling a little bit because I understand thinking out loud. I do it all the time. I'm also chuckling a little bit because the question I think you're asking is really one about it's a political question, as our city attorney often reminds us. Let me say this. First of all, there are 7 boxes, not 6 here. But as we move into those final 2 boxes, which are really where the action happens, right? Project plans are developed. They are subsequently reviewed by Planning Commission. There's public hearings. Then they're approved by resolution of the governing body. The development agreement, which will really show what the developer's responsibility is and what tax increment financing the URA would recommend be brought to bear. All of that then ultimately being approved by the governing body. The question you're asking is a really important one, I think, and a political one, because imagine we're all a developer, right? We're out there and we bring a project forward to the URA and we say we think it deserves tax increment financing and we think it meets the criteria. The URA will make that decision and recommendation to the council. And then you can imagine if the developer gets in front of council and the council doesn't concur, then that's problematic for the developer. Why would a developer want to do that? Well, what I would throw out there is council, to me, all the URA is doing is creating the mechanism to bring financing to bear to make the project happen. But that development will still have to meet all of the policy objectives that the city council and the city have adopted. It'll have to be compliant with the comp plan. It'll have to be compliant with building codes. It'll have to be compliant with development codes. It won't be treated differently. The URA really is just bringing money to bear to solve the problem. So I would hope that by the time a project would get before council, you've approved a development vision, you've said to the URA, solicit proposals for worthy projects that are worthy of tax increment financing. They recommend to you, say, the winning project or projects, and they come and certify it through staff and say, this meets your comp plan, this meets your zoning, this meets all your city requirements, and it concurs with the bigger development vision that you had, then at that point, you would certainly hope that the council would approve that financing to go to that project, knowing that it concurs with all of that advanced work that you've done to narrow your vision down and to a very pointed way. Could it go wrong? Sure, but that's, I think, the philosophy and sort of the strategy behind it.
Thank you. Other questions or comments?
Mayor, I would just say for any of the council members, even though the bylaws aren't really being considered, eventually they will be later as the URA is formed and if members are appointed and the ordinance is approved. So if there are comments you see, feel free to pass those along to the city clerk and we can at least take a look at them and try to get things as correct as we can as we move forward and look at some of the things so that we're prepared when those do get ready for that. That's always helpful. So,
Mr. Cheney, along those lines, it's my understanding, based on what I've heard from the staff tonight, that in addition to the ordinance consideration going through first, second, and third readings here, proposed amendments to the bylaws would be open at this time through these 3 readings as well.
We would just, if you want to provide them to staff, we would look at them and try to look at them holistically. So when I believe bylaws would get approved after the URA is formed and the members are formed, they would send a set of bylaws to the council, just like other boards do when they amend their bylaws. And so it would be a preemptive kind of strike at the bylaws just to make sure we're, covering our bases on it and have a most complete set presented to the URA when that's formed.
So in other words, the council is welcome to provide a set of bylaws for adoption by the board once formed.
Correct.
Thank you very much. All right, council, any further comments or questions before we go to public comment? Then we'll come back again for a final round. Thank you. We'll go to public comment. We have a public comment request from Brett Glass. Let's let Mr. Glass into the meeting. Mr. Glass, you've got the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. For many folks, the whole idea of forming an urban renewal authority is kind of a head scratcher because Laramie maybe has 4 or 5 blocks that could even be called urban. And with 1 or 2 notable exceptions, that any problems that are there could be handled in other ways. So what would a URA actually do? Well, under Wyoming law, it really primarily does 2 things. First of all, it gives the city greatly enhanced powers of condemnation and eminent domain. If the members of the URA that you would handpick declare a property to be blighted, and to do this under state law, they have to declare it to be a menace to the public, the city can seize the property. But of course, such seizures are sure to be fought, and so we're going to have years of costly litigation and other needless expenses anytime we do such a thing. And also of concern is the fact that under state law, these enhanced powers of eminent domain and condemnation extend beyond the city's boundaries. They go 5 miles out into the county in every direction, and this is not going to create good relations between the city and the county. The law also, the second thing that the law does is it allows the city to engage in tax increment financing. That means that it can issue bonds to fund speculative projects that the experts in the free market don't judge to be worthy of investment. And it can do so without putting a question to the voters as to whether to do it. Now, the idea is that these projects will be money losers at first, but the city could borrow money for them in the hope that it eventually be paid back by enhanced tax revenue. The problem is that if you read the papers nowadays, you know that interest rates are spiking right now, and this is a terrible time to borrow money for any purpose. What's more, if a pie-in-the-sky project didn't pan out, taxpayers would be left holding the bag not only for the high rates of interest on the bonds, but also for the principal that was invested in the project. Now, there are other projects with tax increment financing too, but I only have 3 minutes here, so I'll suggest that members of council look at Wikipedia, where there's an excellent article on tax increment financing, the good things about it and the bad things, and there are a lot of concerns there. In any event, right now, when the city wants to engage in a big taxpayer-funded project, it has to do it through one of the extra pennies of sales tax, and it has to present a list of projects to the voters for approval. But forming URA would allow the city to seize, tax, and spend without public input, and it would do it at a time when we're strapped for cash. All of this doesn't seem like a good idea, so I really think the council should consider very carefully whether it wants to proceed with this. I would, seeing the state of the city and the fact that we don't have areas that are a menace or really blighted, I would recommend that you vote no on this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glass. Thank you for taking time to be here to share your views with the council. Do we have any other public comment on the item? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment period. Council members, another opportunity for questions or comments before we go to the roll call vote. City Manager, I just want to quickly ask if it's fairly clear, those areas that have been raised through questions by the council tonight that might need some further research so that we can have some more confidence as we go through the second and third readings of the item if it should pass tonight. Do we need any more clarification?
Mayor, I'm tracking that you'd like to be certain that the authorized area or the boundary of the area is at the municipal limits and not beyond, and that you'd also like clarification as to if the statute does in fact allow for areas outside of the municipality to be included at some future date. But just to reiterate, they're not included now, nor are they intended to be included. And then if you have suggestions, counselors, on bylaw modifications, as we said, we anticipate a resolution to adopt those bylaws to be a companion item to third reading if we get to third reading. So if you'll send those suggestions to us, we can get them incorporated so you have a clean resolution and clean bylaws on third reading consideration.
That sounds exactly right, City Manager. Thank you for the summary. I just wanted to put a fine point on that as we get to the close of our discussion, and I think that summary is accurate. Council members, anything else? Vice Mayor Pierce.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Maybe it's, outside the scope of this current discussion, but if there does become a situation where we reach our boundary and go out into the county, could there be some sort of a joint powers or joint agreement with county commissioners or something to bring in the other governing bodies to have a more complete project, right? Is that something we need to think about now, or am I just too far out there speculating into something that could, bump over a few blocks into the county?
Through you, Mayor, Vice Mayor Pierce, I think once we determine if the statute even allows for that, then that would be a logical next step to think about how we would engage the county were that to occur in the future.
Great, thanks.
Some essential questions that'll be researched, I think. Other questions? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to ask the city clerk to do a roll call vote.
Cumby,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Schmeckel,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Somerville,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 9 yeses and 0 nos, Your Honor.
Thank you, City Clerk. That motion carries. It takes us now to next spot on our agenda for public comments on non-agenda items. Seeing no requests for public comment on non-agenda items, we'll close the comment period and go to item number 19. Future work session topics, upcoming meeting schedule, council, input on those items. City Manager.
Mayor and Council, I didn't mean to preempt the councilors. I just did want to mention, City Clerk, at my request today, sent a note out to all of you, as well as to our incoming councilors that will be seated in January with respect to potential dates for the council retreat in January. At my suggestion, Nancy had suggested that the retreat begin around noon on Friday. Vice Mayor Pierce noted today some concern about meeting during the business hours. So we'll send a revised email tomorrow to also add a query about your availability if we were to begin that retreat work session in January, like around 5 o'clock on Friday as well, to see how those times would work for folks then.
Thank you, City Manager. I've got Councilmember Schuster.
Thank you. I mentioned at the one meeting that I would like to see Laramie's gun laws match the state's. So I will bring that up and see if anybody is still interested in that. I think by the time it'd be written, I will already be off council, so I don't know if anybody else would want to carry that on. So that needs to be a big thought if a second person wants to come on board with that too. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Other discussion, work session topics, discussion around future meeting schedules. Vice Mayor Pierce.
Yeah, I can certainly support Councilor Schuster in that and carry it forward for the next couple of years anyway. So.
To clarify, we want to make sure that municipal ordinance, just as we did earlier tonight, mirrors what's set forth in state statute, is what Councilmember Schuster suggested, I think. All right. Seeing no further input, we will move on to our next item, which should be item number 20, and I'll turn that over to Councilmember Schuster for the motion.
Thank you very much. I'm going to apologize. I won't be attending, but I hope you guys have fun. I know what's going on, and I know that you will support it completely. So, yeah. I move we adjourn to executive session regarding personnel, Wyoming State Statute 16-4-405, small letter A, Roman numeral 10.
Second.
A motion and a second from Vice Mayor Pierce. All those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Same sign.
Mayor, I would just ask, do we need some extra time for the tech people to unwind